Hi, everybody. I've just about finished grading our first batch of critical essays. So if you haven't seen my feedback, please check it out and let me know if you have questions. These critical essays are a big chunk of your grade. So I provided specific feedback on each of your papers, including some specific feedback on how to improve your writing. And of course, feedback on how well you met the requirements of the assignment. But I also want to give you just kind of some general, kind of global feedback on the critical essays. And so I hope this video, along with the specific feedback that you received, will really help you improve, learn more about how to write well, and about film and fiction, and then identify any questions that you have. So, first and foremost, I'm really impressed. You guys came up with so many different insights and analysis, and it's really actually gratifying to see how much of the course content you are absorbing and how well you used mostly Priscilla Wald's concept of the outbreak narrative, but also some of you used Cohen and Sontag to think through key concepts in the course related in particular to outbreak narratives, because that's what this prompt asked you to do. So for the most part, everybody really did an impressive job. So thank you so much for your hard work. I appreciate it. Now, most of you responded to the prompt. And of course, that seems like, of course, everybody's going to respond to the prompt. But I think what can happen sometimes, especially with content that's kind of interesting like ours, is you can easily kind of fall down a rabbit hole and you start chasing these ideas that are really interesting, but sometimes they take you far away from the prompt. So my recommendation is, of course, read the prompt when you begin. I know you all do that. But then when you're in the middle of the essay, and definitely when you're at the end of the essay, go read the prompt again and make sure what you're writing actually meets up with what the prompt is asking you to do. So titles, let me see if I can move my little box here. Okay. So some of you came up with some really interesting and descriptive titles. Some of you not so much. I think the title, which several of you used, Critical Exploration Number 1, is kind of boring. But others of you came up with titles like Commonalities in Pandemic Stories, Narrative Tone in Pandemic Media, Narrative Conventions in Pandemic Stories, Applying Wald's Concept of the Outbreak Narrative to World War Z and Contagion. I like how specific that is. Just from that title, you know what you're going to get in that essay. So another one I liked is Walk, Don't Run, The Pathogenic Origins of Fast Zombies, Super Spreaders, Social Destruction in the Shrinking World, Narrative Conventions in Pandemic Stories. That's also a really great title. So I call attention to titles because a good title should really highlight and crystallize the focus of your papers. Some people are so good with titles, you can just like right at the beginning, find one. Others of you are sort of start your essays and then midway through you find a title. I was not born with the gene that allows you, allows me to just come up with good titles. I always struggle with it. And so I have some friends I talk to who are better at like coming up with good titles. So just be aware of that in your writing, because I do think sometimes it's connected to how well you really understand what it is you're writing about in your essay. Now, because the citations in this class, and even in what you're doing in Yellow Dig, are so important, I wanted to just spend a moment talking about in-text citations. So the overall way to think about this is you find a passage from one of our readings that's really important and that helps you support and explain the claim that you're making in your essay. So the first thing that you want to do, and remember, you're doing this for your reader. So you want to introduce the quote. You can't just throw the quote in because your reader's not, as immersed in this material as you are. So you need to kind of give the context and explain what it is you're about to quote. Then you actually cite it, you quote it. And then after the quotation, you explain the significance specifically about what is in that quote. So sometimes what I was seeing is you guys were finding really great passages from Priscilla Wald, from Cohen, and you were working them in, but what came after, explaining the significance, sometimes it just got really, really general rather than really sticking with exactly what was in the quotation in the quote, and then connecting it to the point of your paragraph and or the overall point of your paper. I want to give you just a couple of examples here of incorporated citations. So here's one, as described in Jeffrey Cohen's Monster Culture. And notice that we get Jeffrey Cohen's full name and the title of his work. Monsters are a reflection of the setting they're born in, quote, as an embodiment of a certain cultural moment, of a time, a feeling, and a place. The monster's body quite literally incorporates fear, desire, anxiety, and fantasy. And then there we have the page number afterwards. So the paragraph goes on, in this sense, our zombies are a manifestation of our cultural fears, and the way we interact with zombies is indicative of how we would like to conquer our fears, or how we fear we would be conquered by them. So this is a good example of just really working that quote into your own sentence. So I like that. Let's look at one more example. So here's one, and you'll notice I made some editorial changes to this. So what I crossed out is how it originally appeared. So notice it started in Priscilla Wald's book. So you don't have to say book. And you want to be concise in your writing. So notice how I cut Priscilla Wald's book out, and I cut she out, and I moved Priscilla Wald so that it reads, in Contagious, Cultures, Carriers, and the Outbreak Narrative, Priscilla Wald explores narrative conventions. Boom. That's a great first line to provide context for that book. Wald coined the term, quote, outbreak narrative, unquote, to define contagion stories as those that, quote, follow a formulaic plot that begins with the identification of emerging infection, includes discussion of the global networks throughout which it travels, and chronicles the epidemiological work that end with its containment, unquote. So of course the passage needs to be cited, the page number needs to be cited there. So what would come after this then is explaining why this quote, what it is about this quote connects to the thesis of this paper. Sorry about that. The works cited page, you guys were a little bit all over the place with these, and I know they're a pain, but I also know you just have to do it. This is an upper division English class, and part of what you're required to do as writers in this class is know how to format your papers properly, and that includes the works cited or the bibliography page. So notice here, this one is an example of a really well done works cited page. So first of all, right there in the middle, it says works cited. We know that. And then we have last name, first name, period, title of the movie in italics. A lot of you didn't italicize your movie titles. Broadway Books, 2008. And then Contagion, directed by Steven Soderbergh, Warner Brothers. Notice how under Priscilla Wald, this is taking 2 lines. And so in a bibliography, you indent that second line. Don't ask me why, just the way it is. And I really highly recommend that you use OWL Purdue. If you just Google OWL Purdue, you will find some great resources for how to do all of this properly. Trying to remember, like, is it a period? Is it a comma? Don't worry about that stuff. Just give yourself time when you write to do your bibliography and look it up on OWL. They do the online writing lab at Purdue. They do APA, they do MLA style, they do Chicago style. So there are different style manuals you can use, but you are responsible for picking one and using that. The other really strong recommendation I would make for those of you who struggle with your writing is to just use the ASU Writing Center. You can do appointments via Zoom. Their tutors are really well trained to help you, not just to copy edit your work, but to really help you take your ideas, shape your paragraphs, connect it to your thesis, like that kind of approach to writing. And it's just a wonderful resource to have. And then I linked this on Canvas and have pointed out to you a couple different times so far this semester, but the whole series called The Writing Process, done by one of our former students right here, is really helpful, I think. So you can just watch these videos quickly, and I really think it's a good way to start thinking in more detail about how to take your writing to the next level. And almost everybody can take their writing to the next level. Very few of us are born great writers. So just know that it's something you have to work on, but also know that no matter what you do career-wise, having great writing skills, I promise you, will make a big difference. We are sadly in a culture that we're losing these communication skills. So you English majors in particular, you know how to read and write. That's going to really help you when you are out there searching for a job or trying to get promoted. Having strong writing skills, you will, I swear you will never regret it. If you ever regret it, email me and say, I regret it. I regret knowing how to write well, but I bet you you will never, never regret it. So you always can come to my office hours, which are Thursdays from 12 to 2. And if that doesn't work, just email me. We can set up a different time. I'm always happy to help, and enjoy the next modules coming up. Thanks.